Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. We thank you for inviting us into your homes today. Our discussion is going to center around centrally assessed taxes. Centrally assessed taxes are taxes that are collected on companies and organizations that have property in more than one county. That has a big impact, however, on you, the in-county taxpayer. We will explore how that impact takes place and what its negative consequences for you, the taxpayer, can be. This is a good episode to stay tuned on. But we need to start by having you understand the process of centrally assessed taxes. So let's look at that first, and then we'll go on to the discussion of where we might find a solution.
Well, you probably got it in the mail recently, your property tax valuation notice, and you went, yikes. Most people don't know they can actually appeal their valuation. You come here to the county assessor's office. This is the one in Salt Lake County. You may end up getting your taxes reduced. This option is also open to businesses. However, large corporations whose business crosses county lines, when they appeal, it may end up costing you more on your taxes.
Locally assessed taxpayers are those taxpayers within a county boundary that the county assessor has no problem determining the value of that property. A centrally assessed taxpayer crosses county boundaries, and so it's not easy for one single assessor to assess their value. The centrally assessed taxpayers are assessed by the tax commission.
The valuation on your real property is assessed using market value, or what similar homes are selling for in your area. With centrally assessed properties like railroads, airports, and power plants, it's not quite that simple.
It's hard to determine just how much that property is worth, so they use these other methods that are more tied to how well the company is performing in a more nebulous way. That makes it more of an art than a science.
That art of determining the value of such properties is rather hard because who can gauge what someone would pay for a railroad, for example? That fact often leads to companies disputing property tax claims as too high, which leads to further appeals. Now, while this may sound like a problem between the tax commission and the industry, this appeals process can actually have adverse effects on you.
The Utah Association of Counties noticed about years ago, decades ago, that these centrally assessed properties were seeing their values decrease over time or stay stagnant over time. And the result has been a property tax shift from centrally assessed to locally assessed. The counties got involved in the appeal process, where the counties were also going to the tax commission and appealing these centrally assessed values. The counties weren't doing this because they wanted more money. The counties were going to get the same amount of money no matter what, based on truth in taxation. The county's concern was that the centrally assessed taxpayers were shifting their burden onto the locally assessed taxpayers, your homeowners and small business owners.
The issues created by the shift in taxes will be the focus of our roundtable discussion, along with some ideas on how to make the system more fair and equitable for everyone.
Now, I was down in the county assessor's office a while ago, but here's a little secret. Come upstairs to the county auditor's office, at least here in Salt Lake County. Take your appeal of your property tax valuation, and you can drop it off right here in this box, and it's going to go directly to the Board of Equalization. It's a whole lot faster process. For the county seat, I'm Terry Wood.
An excellent report. We'll see you on the other side of the break with our roundtable discussion.
If you're looking for the center of the universe, well, good luck. But if you're looking for the center of the off-road universe, look no further than Paiute County. Hundreds of miles of trails turn your day of riding into a week, maybe a month. Heck, a lifetime wouldn't be enough. And this coming August is the perfect opportunity to hit the trail and participate in the Paiute Trail Jamboree. Take off from downtown Marysville by ATV or UTV and ride the most famous destinations in the world. Explore Paiute County and discover the magic and beauty of the land where the rainbow ends.
Unlimited opportunity for adventure? It's all about knowing where to look. ATV adventures, rock crawling events, art festivals, and wildlife events. The opportunities are limitless. Pick your adventure in Millard County.
Next. Have you experienced diarrhea in the last 2 weeks? Did you shower today? With soap? Did you wash well? Down there and back there? Ugh, go see Olga. Ew.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about centrally assessed taxes. It's a topic we've talked about before, but it's one that continues to be central to the issues of counties, particularly energy-related counties, operating. So we're going to continue our conversation. We have Adam Troop, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Utah Association of Counties, Ron Winterton, Duchesne County Commissioner, and we have Bruce Johnson, who is the Chair of the Utah State Tax Commission. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us on the show today.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
In the story, we mentioned this tax shift. And what I'd like to do is have you explain what that trend looks like and how it impacts a county. And specifically, you know, what you will see in that whole process.
Well, for our county, we have a lot of energy out there. And for the bulk of the taxes collected, it comes from the energy industry. And when that softens, then those taxes now need to be made by somebody else, and that comes back to the residential taxpayer. And so we see a big tax shift when that happens.
And how do you solve the problem?
So Chad, one of the issues that's important is the tax rate floats and shifts depending for residential business that locally assessed or for centrally assessed, it floats every year, so that essentially we get in the same amount of tax revenue in a county that we had the year before, plus new growth. So that means if we've got a significant reduction in one area, the tax rate is going to increase to bring in the same amount of money for those locally assessed taxpayers.
And that's part of the linkage that's tied to truth and taxation then, so that the counties are bringing in constant revenue. If you should ever lower taxes, or lower your revenue for the county, would you go through the same process?
No, you don't have to go through that to lower it. Now, for instance, Uinta County just lowered theirs this year. And we were really considering that also. But you have to look down the road 4 or 5 years, because if you do it now, and then all of a sudden you have these services to provide, and you have a shortfall in that income, then you go through truth and taxation to get back what you gave.
That's obviously very unpopular.
But if the valuation does go up, the tax rate goes down.
Right, so the revenue's the same.
And if the valuation goes down, the tax rate goes up. So that happens automatically both ways.
If I think my house is overvalued, I can go through the process of challenging it with the assessor and try and get a change if I do it in time. How do the centrally assessed guys appeal?
It works essentially the same way. The only difference is the original assessing body for a centrally assessed property is our property tax division. We have experts at the tax commission who are experts in airlines and experts in railroads and oil and gas. And they do the initial valuation. And they'll send out a notice of valuation to the taxpayer, which is much like the notice of valuation you'd get as a homeowner. If you disagree as a homeowner, you appeal it to the County Board of Equalization. If you disagree as a centrally assessed taxpayer, you appeal that to the tax commission. And the tax commissioners will then sit as a body, and we hear the appeal, and those can be We've had several that are week-long appeals. They tend to be very involved. We tend to have a lot of experts on both sides, and there tends to be a lot of money involved.
So are counties allowed in that appeals process currently?
The counties are not only allowed in it, if we come up with a decision in which the county has not been a party, and we make the decision that we're going to reduce the value, we have to give the counties notice at that point and a specific opportunity to intervene and say why that value should not go down.
There was talk in the last legislative session about taking that provision out, and taking counties out of the process, because obviously they probably reversed a few appeals here and there. Does that still have steam?
That discussion is still going on, and there's a number of centrally assessed entities that would like to go down that route. Our concern with that, obviously, is who's really the party in interest. It's clearly the counties and the school districts, which get a big chunk of the property tax, and local districts and cities and towns that are going to be receiving the revenue that comes from that valuation as a result of that valuation and the imposition of the tax. The state is really simply a convenient mechanism for grouping this process together, and it's a wise process, sensible process to put into place. But to ask the state to step forward, property tax division, and say, great, this is our job to run with this, I think is a little unreasonable, because they're there as a sort of an assistant and a tool to help us get down that road. So the idea of excluding the counties and the districts would be kind of ridiculous from our perspective, and it would certainly create an unbalanced system. But there are questions about how this system should work and how we can best avoid litigation, get the best outcomes without simply having to run to the tax commission or to court eventually on these.
If you don't appeal, how big of a chunk of revenue can it be for a county?
Well, in our county this year alone, it could be $550,000 to the county.
And what portion of your total county budget does that end up being?
It depends a great deal on the county. If you're in Salt Lake County, I mean, you've got Kennecott, which is a big centrally assessed taxpayer, but you've also got a tremendous amount of other valuable property. Mm-hmm. And so in Salt Lake County, for example, about 9% of the value of the property is centrally assessed property. But if you're looking at Millard County or Emery County, it could be 70 or 80% of the value of the property is centrally assessed property. So a small change in the value of a centrally assessed taxpayer in Millard County is going to have a very significant impact on a local taxpayer in Millard County, whereas the same amount of a shift in Salt Lake County is not going to have that much of an impact.
I think I would say, Chad, honestly, to say that the county doesn't have a real stake in that issue in Millard County is just a fallacy. They certainly do. And the issue is not that the burden is shifted just to homeowners. It's shifted to all those locally assessed businesses, Walmarts, to Kentucky Fried Chicken, to anybody else who owns property and is assessed property tax in that county locally.
Excellent. This is a good place to take a break. We'll take a break. We'll be right back here on the county seat.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah County? Explore the Wasatch Mountains, escape the heat on Utah Lake, shoot a round of golf, visit any one of a number of events and festivals, snap a family photo at Bridalveil Falls, or any one of 100 things to do with family and friends in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Why is it that environmental protection and economic development are often placed at odds with each other? Well, in Duchesne County, they have both. Here, modern industry and resource development go hand in hand with some of the most pristine wilderness in the western United States. a strong economy balanced with a lifestyle of exploration and discovery. But don't take my word for it. Go visit them. Duchesne County. Close enough for business. Far enough, get away.
You go through the day-to-day repeating what you did yesterday. Don't you wish you could access that piece of your life that's missing?
August 4th, you can do just that in Cedar City as the Tour of Utah opens with a brand new 113-mile course that starts and ends right in downtown. Follow the action through the Parowan Gap, up to Bryan Head and through Cedar Breaks National Monument. The Tour of Utah in Cedar City, August 4th. Visit cedarcityayl.com for more information about all the adventure you can experience in scenic southern Utah.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're continuing our conversation about centrally assessed taxes. Obviously, the counties are compelled to be involved, Ron, in this process of appealing or countering the appeals made by industries for saying our properties in that county are worth less than you say they are. But it's not just county impact. You know, it seems to me like you're out there tilting at windmills for a whole bunch of people, not just for yourself.
We are, and it's a statewide issue, and that's where the Association of Counties comes in, is that, you know, they try to have our best interest statewide, and what impacts our county may not impact somebody else's, but they have the impact in another way. So whether it's windmills, pipelines, railroads, airplanes, you know, we have to be there at the table making sure that we don't have this unfair tax shift.
Right.
We look after that.
What about some of the other people that benefit from that appeals process? In other words, there are a whole bunch of other taxing entities that you guys seem to be carrying the weight for.
Well, okay, you have the school districts, and the easiest way for me to remember is it's about 70% of the taxes collected goes to the school districts. And so where are they at when it comes to these discussions? They leave it up to us because the county is given the charge to collect the taxes. And so we want our 17–18% just as bad as, you know, they want their 70%, and yet the whole burden of the fight seems to be always on the counties, and it doesn't come cheap.
A big part of the problem really is that counties have fewer revenue generating options than cities do, for example, or than the school districts do. They have other methods for obtaining funding, and so we're sort of tied into this, going after property tax and finding ways to make certain that we're collecting what we need. So we're somewhat compelled to get into this battle, even though the reality is it's not a winning course for folks on either side a lot of the time.
I would suggest, though, that Utah has struck the right balance there, because there are jurisdictions in the country where a school district or a county or a township or any governmental entity can challenge the property tax assessment as well as the taxpayer. And you have a taxpayer who might have to defend against 5 or 6 different taxing entities. I don't think that's good policy. Okay. I similarly would not think, and the legislature may trump me on that this session, I don't know. I would similarly say it's not good policy to have no voice from the entities that are actually getting the money. So from my point of view, to have the county step up and take that burden is an appropriate balance. You've got a tax receiving entity that's keeping the tax commission honest on one side. You've got a taxpayer that's keeping the tax commission honest on the other side. And what the county can do as far as recovering its costs and spreading those costs appropriately among the constituent taxing entities in the county is something I think they ought to be able to work out.
And Chad, could I add, I think that Bruce just made a very good comment. This is an adversarial system for reaching an appropriate decision using an adjudicative body like the tax commission, or eventually the district court if you want to go there. It's intended to give people a day in court and a voice to be heard. And we support that. I think Ron's point really is we'd like more participation from some of the other entities to say this is worth pursuing or this is not worth pursuing. But we're glad to take the lead on that.
We did have one case several years ago where the Salt Lake County intervened, because the question was how you allocate the tax of the airlines. And it was going statewide, and Salt Lake School District thought, no, it really ought to be staying in Salt Lake County because that's where the airport is. and they intervened, and they actually won that case in the Utah Supreme Court.
Wow. So the issue the counties have really is that the concept works as just long as the numbers get right and it's not imbalanced. Would that be a fair way to sum this up?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, we'll come back and talk about some prescriptions, some things that may improve it in the future right after this commercial break. You're watching The County Seat. We've been covering the topic of centrally assessed taxes, and we'll be back in just a minute.
There's no need to travel far to find that perfect family adventure. Welcome to Yuba Reservoir. Boating, fishing, camping, and ATV trails await your next visit. Join us in Juab County. It'll change your family forever.
Along Interstate 70 and Highway 89 is an area that is rich with high mountain peaks, vast forests, lakes, streams, historical sites, and a climate that is perfect for outdoor adventures no matter what the season. Mark your calendars this next week, August 4th through the 9th, to attend the 107th Annual Sevier County Fair in Richfield, Utah. In the center of it all, Sevier County.
There's no need to travel far to find that perfect family adventure. Welcome to Utah's Nebo Loop Scenic Byway. 38 miles of winding highway through the southern end of the Wasatch Mountains. Join us in Juab County. It'll change your family forever.
There are a couple great things about the Uinta Basin. One is it's still small, it's community. That makes you feel like when you go somewhere, you know everybody. When you know your neighbor knows you, and you can trust each other. People look out for one another.
I grew up in the Uinta Basin, and I think that it's a good place to raise a family.
So we packed up our 3 kids, and here we came to Uinta County, and what a great place it was.
It's not too big, it's not too small.
And it has a lot to offer that you just don't get in the big city anymore.
Welcome back to The County Seat. We're talking about centrally assessed taxes. We have now covered how the process works, how centrally assessed taxes work. We've talked about the role the county plays and the role the State Tax Commission, the entities, plays. We've talked about the balance that comes from it, but it's still not a perfect system, as obvious, because it keeps coming up as a topic in counties. So I would like to take this last 5 minutes and have this panel put their thinking caps on and talk about maybe some of the things that we might be able to do to improve on it.
We have had, it's a hot topic, and a lot of commissioners are very passionate about that, you know, we don't take it in the shorts, that we want to be there.
I think I would say, first of all, I certainly, we would oppose being eliminated from the process and not have any right to appeal. But there are a lot of sort of functions in this process that don't make sense. There's a whole process of people taking a protective appeal. So you're going to incur a cost and file an appeal, even though you're not really that worried about the case. But if you don't file an appeal, you're booted out of the process and you're not able to participate. So some method of saying you don't have to file a protective appeal, but you can join in if somebody is filing, I think would certainly make a lot of sense. It would reduce some of the burden. I think one of the other things that would be helpful is more openness and sharing of information about valuations and how they were arrived at. I think there's some concern from our side that we have to file an appeal to be able to get involved in a case and make certain that we intervene in a way so we can go to the Tax Commission and say we want this detail. But on the other hand, from the taxpayer's point of view, it may be that they don't want us in every case, and maybe we're certainly not in every case. Maybe there should be some proposal for some barrier to entry, aside from cost and burden, but some barrier to entry for the county in terms of saying you can only intervene if there's some real egregious problem here, something really wrong. And in those cases where the Property Tax Division feels that they were right, but the taxpayer wants to appeal, Property Tax Division still always has the authority to go to the Tax Commission. But maybe we need to balance that a little bit so everybody has a little bit more certainty about when an appeal is going to happen and why, and some certainty that people are going to appeal only where there's something way off base.
A little bit of communication in there.
Absolutely, and a little bit of equalness.
I think we made a lot of progress, frankly. We've issued a new rule. Well, it's not new anymore, but it's a 10-year-old rule, at least, as to the methodologies that are preferred in valuing centrally assessed taxpayers. We've got a methodology that's suggested for pipelines and a methodology that's suggested for railroads. And that isn't something we had 20 years ago. And we were litigating the same issues over and over again. And I say that as a lawyer who represented taxpayers 20 years ago, before I came to the Tax Commission. So I think we've made a lot of progress then. I think that the number of appeals we see is lower than it used to be, and where some of those issues have worked their way through the system. I do think this problem is going to be with us always, to some extent, because of the way the system's set up. Everybody does have a right to come in. And unlike an income tax where you report your tax based on the information you have, and then it's up to the government to say what's wrong, in this case, the government tells you what your property's worth. And you always know more about the property than the government does, whether it's your own home or whether it's your generation facility. So I think as long as we're seeing valuation adjustments that are in the 5 to 10% range, that doesn't mean the system's broken. Unfortunately, when you have a $3 billion taxpayer and you've got a county that has 80% of its property tax in centrally assessed, that tends to be a very big number. And so, you know, if I could solve that, if I had a way to solve that problem, I would certainly share it with everyone.
Well, there are a lot of other issues we could cover. One, just very briefly, we had mentioned a cost of living increase. Would you care to address that for just a very quick second?
Yes, the idea of the truth in taxation, which is really an excellent system that we have in Utah, and as I look at other states, you know, where the government frankly just gets all sorts of revenue when the property's values go up, and then they raise the rates when the property values stay the same. We've got a very good system in Utah because our rates fluctuate as the value fluctuates. But there is no cost of living that's built into that. So if a county does not go through truth in taxation, they're going to fall behind. And when I say county, school districts, mosquito abatement districts, libraries, everybody falls behind automatically because they're not keeping up with the cost of living. So what happens is counties shy away from a truth in taxation hearing, and they only do it when they absolutely have to. Then they have to ask for a lot of money to catch up for deferred maintenance. So if they could ratchet that up more gradually, I think they'd be able to meet their revenue needs in a more reasonable, more consistent, and more predictable manner.
That's an excellent point to finish this off. I know there's a lot more debate on this. We'll probably have to address it again as the legislature comes near. This is an important issue, folks, and you really should be involved in it, because it doesn't matter where you live in the state of Utah, this issue does affect you. And you should understand how it works, and you should become informed about centrally assessed taxes within your county. Thanks for joining us on The County Seat. You can always share this with your friends. You can go to our Facebook page. You can go to our website, thecountyseat.tv, and make comments there. We'd love to have your interaction. We'll look for you next week on The County Seat. And remember, local government is where your life really happens. Be involved, be part of the process. We'll see you next week. If you like this video, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel, The County Seat. You can do that here. And we invite you to share with your friends. We also invite you to get all the latest up-to-date information by following us on our social media channels. And if all else fails, make sure that you watch The County Seat Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on ABC4 Utah.